pregnant widow lost everything. Then a Lakota warrior found her crying in the storm. Clara had always believed that life was simple and safe. She had a small home in a quiet town, a loving husband named Daniel, and the warmth of a family that cared for her. She had always dreamt of motherhood, and when she found out she was pregnant, her heart filled with joy. Every morning she woke up imagining the tiny life growing inside her, the sound of little feet running in the house, the laughter and the tears, all mixed together in the life she had always wanted. She and Daniel would talk about the baby for hours. They chose names, decorated the nursery, and promised each other they would give this child a happy life. Clara never imagined that happiness could vanish so quickly. It all began on an ordinary afternoon. Clara was waiting for Daniel to return from work, humming softly as she arranged the baby's clothes and small toys. She could hear the soft rain tapping on the windows, a gentle reminder of the changing season. She loved rainy days. There was something peaceful about watching the world get wet and shiny, feeling safe inside her little home. But that afternoon, the peace was shattered. A knock at the door came, sharp and urgent. Clara opened it to see a neighbor standing there, tears in her eyes and her hands shaking. "Clara! It's Daniel! There's been an accident," the neighbor said, her voice breaking. Clara's mind froze. "What do you mean?" "Where is he? Is he okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. But the neighbor could not answer. She could only shake her head and step aside, allowing the words to sink in. Passed. The next hours passed like a nightmare. Clara could not understand it. How could Daniel, full of life just that morning, be gone? She could not breathe, could not cry, could not think. Her body shook with grief so deep that it felt as though the world had collapsed around her. She walked through the house in a daze, touching the places where Daniel's presence used to fill every corner. The kitchen smelled of his favorite coffee. The living room had the chair he always sat in by the window, and the baby's room, once a place of joy and anticipation, now felt hollow and empty. Days turned into nights, and Clara found herself alone with her sorrow, bare. Friends and family came to visit, offering their condolences and trying to comfort her, but nothing could fill the emptiness inside her. She felt as though the air itself had grown heavy, trapping her in a cage of despair. She cried often, especially at night, when the house was quiet and her loneliness became louder. The walls seemed to whisper memories of Daniel, of the plans they had made, of the dreams they had shared. But pregnancy made everything harder. Clara's body changed in ways that made her more aware of her vulnerability. She would wake in the night feeling the baby move inside her, and a sudden wave of panic would strike her. How could she protect this child alone? How could she give it the life it deserved without Daniel? The weight of responsibility pressed down on her like a storm she could not escape. She started to miss meals, stopped answering calls, and spent hours staring out of the window, watching the rain or the clouds, trying to make sense of her new reality. Financial problems soon followed. Daniel had been the main provider for their household, and without his income, Clara struggled to pay the bills. The house, which once felt cozy and full of love, now became a place of stress and anxiety. Every sound, every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of the wind outside, felt like a reminder of how fragile her life had become.
Letters from banks and notices of unpaid bills arrived, and Clara would open them with shaking hands, sometimes dropping them in tears.
She felt trapped in a cycle she could not escape. One evening, the town experienced a sudden storm. The wind howled, rain lashed against the windows, and the sky darkened as though mirroring Clara's inner turmoil. She had been sitting in the nursery holding a small blanket, imagining the baby she would soon meet. The storm outside grew louder, and with it, the heaviness in her heart. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and ran outside. The rain soaked her quickly, and the wind whipped through her hair. Bet. She walked without direction, her bare feet slipping in the mud, tears mixing with the raindrops on her face. She wandered through the empty streets, the storm drowning out every sound but the roar of the wind and the tapping of rain. Clara felt small and insignificant, as if the universe itself had turned against her. She thought of Daniel, of the life they had planned, and a deep sob tore from her chest. She fell to her knees on the muddy ground, rain soaking her clothes and chilling her to the bone. She held her belly instinctively, whispering promises to the child she had never met, crying for both the life she had lost and the life she would now have to protect. Hours seemed to pass like minutes. Clara did not move, did not care about the cold, or the mud, or the danger. She only felt the storm inside her, the grief, the fear, the helplessness. Her body shook, and she prayed silently, not knowing if anyone could hear her. Bet. She did not pray for herself, but for the small life inside her, hoping it would survive the harsh reality into which it was being born. The night grew darker, and the storm showed no signs of stopping, but Clara did not notice. She was entirely consumed by her sorrow. Somewhere in the distance, a figure moved through the storm. Tasunka, a Lakota warrior visiting the area, had noticed the storm and felt drawn to the small town. He walked carefully, shielding himself from the worst of the wind, when he saw her, a young woman shivering and soaked, kneeling in the rain, crying. Something inside him stirred, a sense of duty, of compassion, of responsibility to help someone in need. He approached slowly, calling out gently to avoid frightening her. Clara did not hear him at first. Best. She only knew the storm and her grief, but when his voice reached her, calm and steady, she looked up and saw a stranger, a man with kind eyes, standing in the rain. There was no judgment in his gaze, only concern. He did not rush her, did not demand anything. He offered a blanket, warm and dry, which she hesitated to accept. But her body was numb with cold, and she had no strength to refuse. She wrapped herself in it, shivering, and for the first time that night felt a small glimmer of relief. Tasunka helped her to stand, his hand steadying her as she struggled to find her balance. He did not ask questions immediately, he only guided her to a small sheltered place nearby. As they moved, Clara's tears continued to flow, but now there was a presence beside her that felt protective. But she did not know his name or why he was helping her, but in that moment it did not matter. For the first time since Daniel's death, she felt the faintest spark of hope. By the time they reached safety, the storm was still raging, but Clara no longer felt entirely alone. The journey through the rain had been terrifying, but it had also brought her into contact with someone willing to offer help without expectation. She did not know what the future held, or how she would survive, but for the first time in weeks, she could imagine a small light at the end of the dark tunnel. And though she still cried, the tears were now mingled with a sense of cautious hope, a fragile thread that might one day grow strong enough to carry her through the storm that had engulfed her life. That night, as she sat wrapped in the blanket, shivering but alive, Clara whispered to herself, Maybe I can survive this. Maybe someone will help me. Outside, the storm continued, but inside her heart, a tiny warmth had begun to glow, fragile yet persistent. Breaths, and far away from the chaos of her grief, a Lakota warrior watched over her, knowing that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could change the course of a life forever. Clara had never felt so lost in her life past, leaving the streets wet and muddy, and the night was quiet except for the soft dripping of water from the trees and rooftops. She shivered under the blanket Tasunka had given her. She did not know him, and yet he had appeared when she had no one else. There was something about his calm presence that made her feel safe, even though her heart still ached with grief. Tasunka gently guided her to a small, abandoned cabin at the edge of the town. It was not much, a roof that leaked in places, and walls that had seen better days, but it offered shelter from the night and a chance to rest. Clara hesitated at first. She was used to being independent, even in her grief, but the storm and her exhaustion had left her no choice. With a trembling hand, she stepped inside, the wooden floor cold beneath her soaked feet. Tasunka removed the wet blanket she had been using and replaced it with a dry one he had brought. "You need to rest," he said softly, his voice steady and comforting. "The storm is over, but the cold can still harm you." Clara nodded silently, too tired and too overwhelmed to speak. She wrapped herself tightly in the blanket, feeling the warmth seep into her frozen body. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to sit quietly, letting someone else take care of her, even for a moment. Tasunka lit a small fire in the cabin's hearth, the flames flickering and casting soft shadows on the walls. Clara watched the fire, mesmerized. It was strange how something as simple as fire could feel like safety, like a promise that the world was not entirely cruel. Bah. She glanced at the stranger beside her, his dark eyes calm and steady, and a question formed in her mind. Why? "Why are you helping me?" she asked in a quiet voice, unsure if she even wanted an answer. Tasunka smiled faintly, not in arrogance but in understanding. "Because you needed help," he said simply, "and no one should face a storm alone." Clara felt a lump form in her throat. The words were simple, but they carried weight. No one had ever spoken to her with such honesty, such respect. She wanted to cry, but instead she sat quietly, letting the warmth of the fire and the presence of this stranger slowly ease her frozen heart. Over the next few hours, Tasunka helped Clara settle in. He brought her a warm meal, something simple but nourishing, and she ate slowly, grateful for the care. He did not press her with questions or expect her to explain herself. He only offered help, quietly and steadily. Clara felt an unfamiliar sensation, a flicker of trust, fragile but growing. She had spent weeks surrounded by grief, feeling as though no one could understand her pain. But this stranger, this Lakota warrior, seemed to understand without needing words. As the night wore on, Clara finally found the courage to speak. She told Tasunka about her husband Daniel, about the accident, and about the fear that filled her heart as she tried to imagine raising a child alone. Her voice trembled, and tears fell again, but Tasunka did not flinch. He listened, quietly and patiently, letting her pour out her pain. When she finished, exhausted from her emotional release, he simply nodded. "Your sorrow is real," he said. "It is heavy, but it does not define you. You are stronger than you know." Clara wanted to argue. She did not feel strong. She felt broken, but there was something in Tasunka's eyes, a quiet certainty, that made her pause. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps she did have some strength left, buried deep beneath the grief. For the first time in weeks, she dared to imagine that maybe, just maybe, she could survive. The next morning, Clara woke to sunlight streaming through the cabin windows. The storm had left the world washed and clean, the air fresh and alive. She felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. The tasks ahead were overwhelming. Finding a home, earning money, preparing for the baby, but for the first time she did not feel entirely alone. Tasunka was there, offering help not out of obligation but out of genuine care. He suggested that they visit the town together to see what opportunities might be available. Bah. Clara hesitated, unsure if she was ready to face the outside world. But Tasunka's quiet encouragement gave her courage. They walked through the town slowly, Clara wrapped in a dry coat and holding on to Tasunka's steady arm. People stared at her, recognizing her as the widow of Daniel, but the stares did not matter. For the first time, she felt as though someone was watching her, not with pity, but with respect and protection. They found a small community center that offered temporary help for people in need. Tasunka helped Clara fill out forms, explaining her situation with care. She had never asked for help before, but now she realized that accepting it was not a weakness. It was survival. She felt a small sense of accomplishment as she received a modest supply of food, blankets, and baby essentials. For the first time in weeks, she felt the weight of hopelessness lift slightly. Over the following days, Tasunka continued to support Clara. Desperation. He helped her find a small rented room in a safe part of town, furnished simply, but enough for her to live comfortably. He taught her practical skills, how to manage money carefully, how to cook simple meals for herself and the baby, and even small safety tips to protect herself while alone. Clara listened intently, absorbing every word. She was learning not just how to survive, but how to take control of her life again. Their relationship grew quietly. Clara felt an increasing sense of trust and comfort with Tasunka. She shared stories of her childhood, her dreams, and her fears. He listened, never judging, always encouraging, and in turn, he shared pieces of his own life, stories of his people, his values, and the importance of honor and courage. Clara found herself inspired by him, learning not just from his words but from his actions, his patience, his respect, and his unwavering support. There were difficult moments too. Clara had panic attacks at times, moments when grief overwhelmed her and she could not breathe. Tasunka was always there, holding her hand, guiding her through deep breaths, and reminding her that it was okay to feel pain. Slowly, she learned to trust that emotions could be felt without being destructive. She was learning that healing was not about forgetting, but about moving forward while carrying the memory of her loss with care. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, Clara and Tasunka sat outside her small room. The baby kicked inside her, a gentle reminder of life and hope. Clara placed a hand on her belly, feeling the warmth of her child and the promise of tomorrow. "I never thought I could feel hope again," she whispered. "But maybe I can." Tasunka nodded, a faint smile on his face. "Hope is always there," he said. "Sometimes we just need someone to help us see it." As the days turned into weeks, Clara began to rebuild a sense of normalcy. She returned to simple routines, preparing meals, organizing her living space, and preparing for the baby's arrival. She even started helping others in small ways, donating supplies she no longer needed and offering encouragement to those who were struggling. Each act, no matter how small, helped her feel connected to the world again. Breath. Through it all, Tasunka remained a quiet, steady presence. He never forced his way into her life, never demanded attention or gratitude. He simply offered guidance, safety, and friendship. Clara began to realize that trust and support could exist without expectation, and that kindness could heal even the deepest wounds. She found herself laughing softly at small jokes, enjoying the warmth of shared silence, and feeling a gentle bond that was slowly growing into something meaningful. The story of Clara and Tasunka was not just about survival. It was about the small moments that rebuild a broken heart. The warmth of a fire, the taste of a hot meal, the calm of a gentle voice in the night, and the strength found in accepting help. Clara had lost almost everything she had loved, but she was beginning to understand that life had not ended, It had only changed direction, and with courage and support she could navigate this new path. By the end of that month, Clara no longer felt like the broken, helpless woman who had wandered into the storm. She felt alive, cautious but ready to face the future. She had learned that grief was part of life, but it did not have to define her. She had learned that trust could be rebuilt, and that human kindness could appear in the most unexpected forms, bends. And most importantly, she had learned that she could carry on. Not just for herself, but for the new life she would soon welcome into the world. Clara was beginning to feel a sense of balance returning to her life. Though the grief for Daniel still lingered, it no longer consumed her every thought. The small room she had rented, though simple, had begun to feel like a home. Each day she woke with a little more courage and a little more hope. The baby inside her kicked often, reminding her that life had a way of continuing, even after great loss. Tasunka remained a steady presence. He would visit every day, sometimes bringing small supplies, sometimes just sitting quietly with her. At first, Clara had been hesitant, worried that she might depend on him too much. But over time, she realized that his support did not take away her independence. Instead, it gave her the strength to face challenges she could not face alone.
One morning, Tasunka suggested they go to the market together.
Clara had been hesitant to leave her small room, worried about the town, about people staring, about the world being too large and overwhelming. But he spoke gently. "Step by step," he said. "You do not have to face everything at once." Clara nodded, and together they stepped into the cool morning air. The streets were bustling with people preparing for the day. Shops opened, children ran to school, and vendors arranged their goods. Clara felt nervous at first, her heart pounding. She kept close to Tasunka, holding his arm for support. He guided her calmly through the crowd, teaching her how to navigate it, how to focus on small goals rather than the entire day ahead. By the time they reached the market, Clara felt a little braver. They visited several small shops to gather supplies for the baby. Tasunka helped her select clothes, blankets, and other necessities, explaining the importance of each item. Clara felt a mix of gratitude and embarrassment. She had never been in a position to rely so heavily on someone else. But Tasunka's calm manner made it easier to accept help without feeling weak. He treated her not as a helpless woman, but as someone who was learning to take care of herself and her child. After the shopping, they stopped at a small cafe. Clara had never allowed herself such comfort, but Tasunka insisted. "You need nourishment for both you and the baby," he said. "Best." Clara smiled faintly. She realized he had a way of giving advice without making her feel pressured. At the cafe, they sat in silence for a few moments, enjoying the warmth of the sun through the window and the smell of coffee and fresh bread. Clara felt a rare sense of peace, something she had not experienced in a long time. As the days went on, Tasunka continued to teach her small skills that would help her live independently. He showed her how to manage her budget, how to prepare simple but nutritious meals, and even how to repair minor problems in her rented room. Clara found herself learning quickly, her confidence growing with each small accomplishment. She felt empowered, not just because of Tasunka's guidance, but because she realized that she could indeed manage on her own, with the right support. One afternoon, as they worked together to organize supplies, Clara's mind wandered. She thought about Daniel and the life they had planned. She still missed him terribly, and some days the grief would hit her in waves. But now, those waves no longer drowned her. Instead, they reminded her of what she had loved and lost, and they made her determination to survive stronger. Tasunka noticed her quiet reflection and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It is okay to remember," he said softly. "It does not make you weak." It makes you human. Clara began to open up more about her feelings. She spoke of the fear that gripped her at night, the loneliness that made her cry when no one was watching, and the anxiety about the future. Tasunka listened without interrupting, offering only gentle words of encouragement. He shared stories from his own life, about challenges he had faced and overcome. Clara realized that strength was not about never feeling fear or sadness, but about continuing even when those feelings existed. One evening, as the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Clara went for a short walk with Tasunka. The air was cool and the town was quiet, giving her time to reflect. She felt the baby move inside her, a tiny reminder of the life she was nurturing.
She looked at Tasunka and said, "I never thought I would feel brave again. I thought the loss would destroy me."
Tasunka nodded, understanding. Courage is not the absence of fear, he said. Bram, it is moving forward even when you are afraid, and you are already doing that.
As they walked, they noticed a small community garden that had been neglected for months.
Tasunka suggested that Clara might find comfort in helping to revive it. At first she was unsure. Gardening seemed small, almost insignificant compared to the challenges she faced. But as she began to pull weeds and plant seeds, she felt a strange sense of peace. The act of nurturing life outside of herself reminded her of the life growing inside her. She realized that taking care of something small could also help her heal emotionally. Clara spent several afternoons tending the garden. Tasunka would join her sometimes, helping with heavier tasks and giving advice. Together, they restored the garden, planting flowers and vegetables. The process was slow and sometimes frustrating, but each small success brought a sense of accomplishment. The garden became a symbol of resilience, a place where life could grow even after harsh storms, much like Clara herself. During this time, Clara also began to reconnect with people in the town. Some neighbors who had been distant reached out, offering small gestures of kindness. Clara learned to accept these gestures without feeling ashamed. She discovered that she was not as alone as she had thought. Her trust in the world, which had been shattered by grief, was slowly being rebuilt. One day, Clara received a small letter in the mail. It was from Daniel's family, expressing their support and reminding her that she was not alone. She felt a mix of emotions: sorrow, gratitude, and relief. She realized that while Daniel was gone, his memory and the people who cared about her could still offer comfort. She shared the letter with Tasunka, who nodded approvingly.
"You are surrounded by more support than you realize," he said. "It is okay to accept it." As her pregnancy progressed, Clara began to feel more physically strong.
She followed the advice Tasunka had given her about diet, rest, and exercise. She could feel the baby growing stronger each day, a small source of joy and motivation. Tasunka continued to offer guidance, making sure she felt safe and prepared for the challenges ahead. Clara appreciated his patience and dedication. She had never met anyone who offered help so selflessly. By the end of the month, Clara's life had changed significantly. She was more confident, more independent, and more hopeful about the future. She still grieved for Daniel, but she had learned that grief did not have to define her life. She had a growing support system, practical skills, and a newfound belief in her own strength. The bond between her and Tasunka had deepened, not just as protector and dependent, but as friends who respected and cared for each other. One quiet evening, Clara sat on the small porch of her rented room, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Tasunka sat beside her, quietly enjoying the moment. Clara placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby move again. "I am ready," she whispered. "Ready to face the world and ready to give my child a good life." Tasunka smiled gently, his eyes reflecting pride and understanding. "You have already shown strength beyond measure," he said, "and your child will know that strength through you." As night fell, Clara felt a sense of calm that she had not known in a long time. She had survived the storm of grief, begun to rebuild her life, and discovered a resilience she had not believed she possessed. She still had challenges ahead, but she now faced them with courage and determination, and most importantly, she had learned that even in the darkest moments there could be light, small, steady, and unwavering, if one was willing to accept help and nurture hope. Clara's life had begun to feel steadier, but the road ahead was still full of challenges. Her pregnancy was advancing, and though she was healthier and more confident than she had been months before, each day brought new worries. She often thought about how she would care for her child alone, how she would manage the world without Daniel, and whether she could truly survive all the difficulties ahead. Despite this, she had Tasunka by her side, offering guidance and quiet strength. One morning, Clara woke to a sharp pain in her belly. She panicked immediately, unsure if the baby was okay. Fear gripped her heart, and she clutched her stomach, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Tasunka arrived quickly, noticing her distress. "Clara, breathe," he said calmly, taking her hand. He guided her slowly, helping her sit and relax while they decided what to do. His steady presence was comforting, and Clara realized that panic could be eased when someone was there to support her.
They called the doctor, who advised Clara to come in immediately for a checkup.
The short drive felt long and terrifying. Clara's mind was full of worry, but Tasunka stayed close, holding her hand and speaking in calm, encouraging tones. When they reached the clinic, Clara's fear had not vanished, but it had lessened. The doctor reassured her that the baby was fine, but she needed to rest and avoid overexertion. Clara felt relief flooding through her, mixed with a renewed determination to care for herself and the child growing inside her.
After the visit, Tasunka helped Clara return to her small rented room.
He carried groceries, cleaned the space, and prepared a warm meal. Clara watched him, grateful not just for the help, but for the thoughtfulness behind it. Every gesture reminded her that kindness could be quiet and powerful, and that support could come from the most unexpected places. She began to understand that survival was not just about strength, but about allowing oneself to accept care and guidance. Days passed, and Clara began to notice small changes in herself. She felt stronger physically, more aware of her own resilience, and more capable of handling daily tasks. She even began preparing a small corner of her room for the baby, arranging blankets, tiny clothes, and a little cradle she had managed to buy. Each small task brought her hope, breaths. It reminded her that even after great loss, life could still hold beauty and purpose. Tasunka continued to visit and guide her, but he also encouraged her to reach out to others in the community. He suggested she attend prenatal classes offered at the local clinic, where she could meet other mothers and learn important skills. Clara hesitated at first, shy and uncertain about being around strangers, but Tasunka gently encouraged her, explaining that connection with others could strengthen her emotionally and socially. With a deep breath, Clara agreed. At the clinic, Clara met other women who were expecting children, each with their own stories and struggles. Listening to them, sharing small moments of laughter and concern, she realized she was not as alone as she had felt. The community provided warmth and understanding that she had longed for, and she began to feel a sense of belonging. Her bond with Tasunka remained strong, but she now had a wider network of support. This balance gave her a confidence she had never known in the weeks following Daniel's death. One evening, a sudden storm swept through the town, dark clouds filling the sky, and rain pelting against the rooftops. Clara's first instinct was panic. She remembered the storm when she had felt most alone and lost. But this time was different. She was not alone. Tasunka arrived quickly, checking on her and helping her secure the small room against the wind and rain. Together they moved furniture to prevent damage and ensured the baby's area was safe and dry. Clara felt a sense of calm she had never known before. Storms. She realized that challenges could still be frightening, but facing them with support made them manageable. The months continued, and Clara's pregnancy progressed. She experienced fatigue, discomfort, and emotional swings, all natural but sometimes overwhelming. Tasunka was always there to encourage rest, prepare meals, and provide practical guidance. He helped her practice breathing exercises for relaxation, taught her ways to stretch safely, and reminded her to take things slowly. Clara began to understand that patience was as important as courage, and that preparation could turn fear into confidence. One afternoon, as they prepared a small meal together, Clara spoke quietly. "I never thought I would find strength again," she said. "I thought grief would never end, that I would always feel broken." Tasunka nodded, understanding her deeply. "Healing is not a straight path," he said. It comes in steps, sometimes slowly, sometimes unexpectedly.
And you have taken many steps already? Clara smiled faintly.
Breath. She realized that while her heart still carried pain, it also carried hope, a hope that she had almost forgotten she could feel. As the due date approached, Clara faced another challenge. The small rented room she had been living in was not ideal for welcoming a baby. It was cramped and had limited facilities. Tasunka helped her search for a safer, more comfortable place to stay. After several days of searching, they found a modest apartment with enough space for her and the child. It was not luxurious, but it was warm, safe, and clean. Clara felt relief and a sense of accomplishment. Moving into the new apartment symbolized a fresh start, a step forward in reclaiming her life. Clara also began thinking more about her child's future. She carefully prepared the baby's room, washing clothes, arranging supplies, and imagining a life filled with love and security. She thought of Daniel, of the promises they had made together, and felt a mix of sadness and determination. Though he was gone, she was determined to honor his memory by giving their child the best life she could. The love she felt for her unborn child became a source of strength, guiding her through each day. During this time, Tasunka shared stories of his culture and heritage, teaching Clara lessons about resilience, respect, and courage. He spoke of the importance of community, of facing adversity with honor, and of cherishing life even when it seemed uncertain. Clara listened intently, learning not just practical skills, but also wisdom that helped her navigate emotional challenges. She felt a growing admiration for Tasunka, recognizing that his guidance went beyond physical assistance. It was shaping her into a stronger, more resilient person. Despite the progress, Clara still had moments of fear. She worried about being a single mother, about the baby's health, and about the unpredictability of life. During these moments, Tasunka remained a calm anchor. He would sit with her, encouraging her to breathe, reminding her of the steps she had already taken, and reassuring her that she was capable of handling whatever came next. Clara began to see fear not as a stopping point, but as a signal to prepare, to be cautious, and to remain courageous. One night, as Clara prepared for bed, she felt the baby move more strongly than before. Bed. She placed her hand gently on her belly, whispering a promise to the child.
"I will protect you!"
"I will give you love, and I will be strong for you." Tasunka stood quietly nearby, respecting the moment. Clara realized that she no longer felt as helpless as she had months ago. She had learned to accept help, to face challenges, and to nurture hope. She had rebuilt a part of herself she thought was lost forever. By the end of Part 4, Clara had transformed. She was still a widow, still carrying the pain of loss, but she was no longer consumed by grief. She had a safe place to live, support from Tasunka and the community, and a growing confidence in her ability to care for herself and her child. She was learning that life could be beautiful again, even after tragedy, and that resilience was not something she was born with, but something she built through action, courage, and love. As the evening sun set, casting golden light across her small apartment, Clara sat quietly, hand on her belly, feeling a sense of peace she had never known. The storm of her past had passed, and though life would still bring challenges, she was ready. With Tasunka by her side, and the promise of new life in her arms, she could face the future with hope, courage, and determination. The day finally arrived. Clara woke before sunrise. A mixture of excitement, fear, and anticipation filling her chest. Her belly was heavy and round, and the baby's movements were strong and insistent. Bad. She had prepared for this moment for months, guided and supported by Tasunka and her growing strength. Though anxiety lingered, she felt a sense of readiness she had never believed possible months before. Tasunka was already awake when she emerged from the small bedroom. He had prepared a simple breakfast, ensuring Clara had energy for the day ahead. He smiled softly, sensing her nervousness, and said, "It is time, Clara. You are ready, and we will face this together."
His calm voice grounded her.
Clara realized that the journey she had traveled, through grief, fear, and uncertainty, had prepared her for this moment. The ride to the hospital was quiet. Clara focused on her breathing, recalling the techniques Tasunka had taught her over the past months. The city streets were quiet in the early morning, and the sunlight glinted off the wet pavement, remnants of a light rain that had passed overnight. Every movement of the car reminded her of the new life waiting for her. She pressed a hand to her belly, feeling the baby respond with a kick, as though ready to greet the world. When they arrived at the hospital, Clara felt a wave of nervousness. The building was large and unfamiliar, filled with the hum of activity. Tasunka stayed close, holding her hand as they walked through the doors. The nurse greeted them warmly, and soon Clara was settled in a room prepared for delivery. She marveled at the quiet efficiency around her, feeling reassured by the professionalism of the staff. The hours that followed were a mixture of effort, patience, and determination. Clara focused on each contraction, each breath, guided by the techniques she had learned. Tasunka remained a constant presence, offering encouragement and calm reassurance. "You are doing well," he said softly. "Every breath brings your baby closer to your arms." Clara felt the weight of exhaustion, but also the deep strength that had grown inside her over the past months. She realized that this moment was the culmination of all she had endured. The grief, the fear, and the courage she had nurtured within herself. As the labor progressed, Clara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of Daniel, the love they had shared, and the plans they had made. Fast, tears streamed down her face, not from sadness alone, but from the realization that life could continue, and that hope could exist even after tragedy. She whispered a quiet promise to Daniel, promising that their child would be loved and cherished, and that his memory would live on through their child. Finally, after hours of effort, the moment came. Powerful surge, and with a final push she heard the first cries of her baby. Relief and joy washed over her in waves, mingled with exhaustion. She held her newborn close, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. The baby's tiny fingers curled around hers, a delicate reminder of the strength of life and the promise of new beginnings. Tasunka stood beside her, sharing the awe and joy of the moment silently, knowing words were unnecessary.
In the days that followed, Clara adjusted to her new life as a mother.
Caring for a newborn was exhausting, challenging, and rewarding in equal measure. She learned to understand the baby's cries, to soothe, feed, and care for the tiny life she had brought into the world. Bao Sunka remained supportive, offering practical help, guidance, and gentle encouragement. He never overstepped, respecting her role as a mother while ensuring she had the strength to thrive. Clara also began to reflect on her own growth. She had survived grief, navigated fear, and faced uncertainty with courage. Birth. Her strength was not born overnight. It had been built slowly, through small victories, the acceptance of help, and the cultivation of hope. As she rocked her baby in her arms, she realized that life could be beautiful again. Not the same as before, but rich in its own way, full of love, resilience, and possibilities. The small apartment they had prepared together became a home filled with warmth.
Each day, Clara and Tasunka worked together to create routines that balanced care for the baby, household responsibilities, and personal growth.
Sunka shared quiet moments of teaching, showing Clara how to handle emergencies, organize supplies, and plan for the future. Clara embraced each lesson, grateful not just for practical skills but for the deeper sense of security they provided.
Over time, Clara began to feel a quiet confidence she had never known. She took walks with the baby in a small stroller, navigating the streets with ease.
Neighbors greeted her warmly, offering congratulations and sharing small pieces of advice or encouragement. Clara discovered that life outside the apartment, once terrifying and overwhelming, was now something she could face with courage. Psh! She realized that the grief she had felt for Daniel had not disappeared, but it had transformed into a gentle, guiding memory that gave her strength rather than fear. As the weeks turned into months, Clara watched her child grow, marveling at every small milestone. First smiles, tiny hands reaching out, coos, and gentle laughter. Each moment was a testament to her courage, resilience, and the care that had surrounded her during the hardest times. She often found herself glancing at Tasunka, appreciating his steady presence and unwavering support. Though their bond had begun in a moment of chance, it had grown into a connection founded on respect, trust, and quiet understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light across the apartment, Clara held the baby close and spoke softly. "You are my joy, my hope, and my strength," she whispered. Tasunka stood nearby, silently watching, understanding that words were unnecessary. The room was filled with a sense of peace and accomplishment. Clara had survived storms, both literal and emotional, and had emerged stronger, ready to embrace life fully once again. She thought back to the stormy night when Tasunka had first found her, crying in lost habitation. At that time she had felt small, helpless, and alone. But through months of struggle, learning, and support, she had discovered courage within herself. She had rebuilt her life, embraced hope, and welcomed new love into her world. Life was not easy, and challenges would always exist, but Clara now knew she had the strength, support, and wisdom to face them. The story of Clara's journey was not just about survival. It was about resilience, love, and the quiet power of human kindness. She had experienced unimaginable loss, yet she had also discovered that support, empathy, and connection could transform despair into hope. She had learned that strength was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to continue despite it.
In the months that followed, Clara continued to thrive.
Breaths. She balanced caring for her child, maintaining her home, and nurturing her own growth. She built meaningful connections with others in the community, sharing her story and offering support to those in need. She discovered a profound sense of purpose, knowing that her experiences could inspire and comfort others facing hardship. Tasunka remained a trusted friend and guide. Their relationship, rooted in respect and care, grew deeper with time. He celebrated Clara's victories, helped her navigate challenges, and offered quiet companionship when words were not enough. Together they faced the small and large moments of daily life, understanding that resilience and hope were cultivated through shared support, patience, and courage. Bess. As Clara looked out her apartment window one evening, watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky, she felt a sense of completion. The storms of her past, grief, fear, and uncertainty, had shaped her, but they no longer defined her. She had found strength, love, and hope in the most unexpected ways. Holding her child close, she whispered a silent promise to live fully, to embrace joy, and to honor the memory of Daniel by giving their child a life filled with love and courage. And in that moment, Clara understood a profound truth. Life would always bring challenges, but it would also bring light, kindness, and new beginnings. The storms would pass, and when they did, the world could feel fresh, alive, and full of possibilities. Bet. She had lost much, but she had gained something even greater. A renewed spirit, a new life, and the courage to face whatever came next.